Coming up tonight, we start a new sailing with another new ship. Quantum of the Seas realizes what went wrong is everything goes right with the Anthem. And we find out what's happening in 270. It's all coming up, so let's set sail. So, we've done 50 episodes of the Cruise View so far. Now we're on to the 51st, and with it comes a brand new sailing on a rather familiar place. Looks like we've already been here, but we actually have not. This is not the Quantum of the Seas, but in fact the Anthem of the Seas. Her sister by about 6 months younger, of course launching in the spring of 2015, while we of course sailed on the Quantum of the Seas in fall of 2014. So at that time, the Anthem was not even out when we had sailed in her previous. So a lot has changed, of course, since then. We, of course, know on that sailing, things did not go anywhere near as smooth as they should. But that is not the case today, as you'll find out through this episode and hopefully throughout the rest of the series, as today is only day one of the Cruise View sailing from Onboard, the Anthem of the Seas. And today, of course, was Monday, April 17th, 2017. Our top stories, obviously the fact that we are back to a Quantum class. Now, last time we were on here, of course, with the Quantum of the Seas, that was the 8-night inaugural, and the 11-night Southern Caribbean sailing back-to-back, so a total of 19 nights on the Quantum of the Seas, covering pretty much everything you can possibly imagine about the Quantum of the Seas. And we won't go into that level of detail in the series. If you really want to find out about every little venue, every dining venue, all those kinds of things, you can of course go back and look at the Quantum of the Seas series and see all those, as every day did feature a different daily dine as well as a different venue tour. For this series, we're going to keep things a little bit simpler. Once again, like I've said, the last couple series, try not to duplicate things that we've done previously. And that means, of course, no real venue or dining tours. We will, of course, have the daily menus included like we did on the previous sailings. And there may be a couple venue tours, a little more special venue tours than the traditional ones, but we'll see what comes of those as we continue through this series. So for this sailing, it is very similar to the 11-night Southern Caribbean sailing on the Quantum of the Seas, except this one is 12 nights long. We start out, of course, today in Cape Liberty, New Jersey, just like the Quantum of the Seas did. Have 2 days at sea as we make our way down to San Juan, Puerto Rico for a night visit again. A visit to Phillipsburg, St. Martin. A brand new port to our itinerary is the inclusion of St. John's, Antigua. We were also supposed to originally go to St. Lucia, but unfortunately due to issues with the harbor not being dredged in time, we are going back to Martinique as we had on the previous sailing. And of course, Bridgetown, Barbados, Basse-Terre, St. Kitts, and then ending it with those 3 sea days back up north to Cape Liberty once again. So a total of 12 nights, the exact same itinerary as the Quantum's 11-night Southern Caribbean, with the inclusion of Antigua as our 12th night. So obviously today, our location was in Cape Liberty, New Jersey, also known as Bayonne. And that, of course, is the same place as the Quantum of the Seas, but we did have much better weather. We are, of course, in April this time, not November and December. So it was a beautiful, warm day. And in terms of our departure, we had a very early departure, a 3 p.m. departure, which, as far as I can remember, is the earliest departure I've ever experienced on a ship. So that, of course, really kind of throws your day off a little bit. But we, of course, had an all aboard at 2 p.m. with a muster drill at 2:30 leading up to that 3 o'clock departure. We were delayed a little bit. There was some harbor traffic in the area. A cargo ship came in really close to the Anthem of the Seas just before we're ready to depart, just after 3 p.m. So, of course, that delayed us a little bit. We got going probably about 3:15, and we had pretty much smooth sailing from there, reaching the Verrazano Narrows Bridge at about 3:45 to make our passage underneath once again. And unlike the previous Quantum sailings, since it was such an early departure, that meant it was light out the entire time. So we could see Coney Island, all the different things on the other side of the bridge that we've traditionally not been able to see, as it was always dark once we got under that bridge. So it was a very beautiful departure. And then after that, it seemed like things were kind of gone, and suddenly at 4:45, the pilot got picked up, something I haven't actually seen on any of our previous departures, because it was usually dinner time or just late and dark out. But this day we did get to see it, and not only was it a pilot boat, we also had a pilot ship come along, so that is something a little bit unusual that we haven't seen in the other ports, even along the west coast where there were a lot of oddities on that Jewel sailing. We did not actually see a pilot ship following the pilot boat around like we did today. And throughout that departure, we of course had beautiful weather. It is April, as I mentioned, so we have much warmer weather even out of the northeast. And today we had a high of, listed high at least, of 68. It actually got much warmer than that. We got temperatures up near about the mid-70s at points throughout the day, it seemed like. And it was mostly sunny. It was very cloudy in the morning. There was no rain in the forecast, but it did drizzle during the arrival time, as it has on many of our recent sailings. And tonight, we of course had a beautiful sunset after we departed, because it was such an early departure. Once we're out at sea, tonight at 7:36, we had an incredible departure off the side of the ship. Beautiful red sky, all the things you look for in a sunset. And tonight, that weather has really kind of flip-flopped. We have nice seas. It was very calm earlier today. Now we have roughly 3 to 4.5 foot seas, but at the same time it is very cold and foggy out. It's about 45 degrees out right now, and you really cannot see much off the side of the ship. So obviously today was the first day on board the Anthem of the Seas. That means we of course had to board the ship, something that did not always go the smoothest on the Quantum of the Seas, but this has really been a complete flip-flop. Everything you can possibly think, as I mentioned on the Harmony Seas, that was really a flip-flop of the Quantum. This is not even really the same ship. It is amazing just how different things are, and what really surprised me, it's not even the Harmony of the Seas. They really are doing things completely different. The Harmony of the Seas doesn't even seem like to be an evolution of the Anthem. It seems almost like an evolution of the Quantum class, and possibly not even on par with the way that the Anthem of the Seas is doing things. So of course, Cape Liberty had its brand new terminal last time we sailed in the Quantum. Since then, they've opened the parking garage. They've also made a couple other additions. They've got all of the awnings up so that there's nice covering everywhere that they are unloading luggage. They have also added a departure lounge, something that was a major issue on the Quantum of the Seas, where we're all just kind of dumped out into the cold in the middle of winter with nowhere to go but stand out on the sidewalk while we waited for rides that were stuck in traffic. Now there's a nice departure lounge that we hopefully will not have to see on the last day, but if we do, it of course will be there waiting for us. And they did make a whole lot of changes. They really kind of rethought this entire process. For the most part, in my opinion, it seems like they kind of threw the old process out, rethought it, because it really was very different. The big thing, like we saw in the Harmony, they did not do the luggage tagging. That has gone away, and that made getting your luggage checked in and getting into the terminal incredibly smooth and efficient. Once in the terminal, they have removed all the people walking around with iPads, something that really kind of surprised me, since Harmony is a brand new ship, and she was doing that in Barcelona just 6 months ago. So Quantum did this 2.5 years ago. Harmony did it 6 months ago. It does not seem like the Anthem of the Seas is doing it. She's got a little more of a hybrid setup. So one of the other Quantum issues, no seating in the place. Tons of seating. The whole place was basically filled with chairs, so there's plenty of room to sit. And now when you enter the terminal, you actually pass through security first. So you go through the security point, go through all the x-ray machines, get yourself all checked, and then from there, if you have a disability or you need any extra assistance, they tend to take you over to the chairs and you can sit, relax, and somebody will check you in on an iPad, something very similar to the traditional way, except you can actually sit and relax if you needed to instead of having to stand in the middle of a crowd or anything. They also took all the little stands that they had along the wall when the Quantum was here that were used for things like taking your photo or even just printing your set sail pass, and they made those the traditional check-ins. So it looked like they had iPads mounted to the desk similar to the Royal IQs that are located on the ship, And it also appeared to have a couple people standing there walking around, but very close to those desks. So for the most part, it was pretty much a hybrid of the classic desk setup of an old check-in system with the new setup of the iPads, and it just seemed to go very efficiently. Our check-in time was 10:30, which was the earliest boarding time you could get when we got there. We got right into the terminal, we got right through security, we got checked in, we stopped to take some pictures, we really took our time, we did not rush in any way. We never stood in any lines the entire time, and within 15 minutes we were already on the ship. So this was faster than Harmony of the Seas, way quicker and more efficient than Harmony of the Seas, where there were just massive lines out the door. It was incredibly quick compared to Quantum of the Seas just 2.5 years ago, where it was really a bit of chaos in that terminal. It was just a complete change of things and entirely for the better. It just went so perfectly smooth, which if you've watched all these series, you know just how surprised I was of the efficiency of the classic system on the Jewel. This finally showed that this new way of doing things can be just as efficient. You just kind of have to think about it the old way and blend it with the new, and that's something that continued all the way through this day, was a blending of the new technology, the new way of doing things, and the classic way of doing things. Not throwing out the old and trying to force a new way of doing things, but blend the two together, and it just seems like this whole ship is a completely new ship compared to the Quantum of the Seas. It's not just the same design with a little bit of extra entertainment or shows thrown in. It is a completely different way of operating a ship compared to the way the Quantum of the Seas was when it was here 2 years ago. And it is so far beyond what it should have been way back when Quantum set sail. It was perfect from the moment we boarded all the way to now tonight. And that really included everything on board. When you walked onto this ship, there were stands everywhere. There were stands all over the place to try to sell dining packages, drink packages, entertainment, reservations, all the different things you'd want just scattered throughout the ship. Your internet package, where on the Quantum, we really had to hunt for it. They had signs everywhere directing you to where you needed to go and what you needed. Even the Royal Wow bands, the thing that really struggled on the Quantum of the Seas, surprisingly struggled on the Harmony of the Seas 6 months ago. A ship that is pretty much a year newer than the Anthem of the Seas and 2 years newer than the Quantum of the Seas, still took your WOW band and threw it out every time there was a problem. Today, I brought my classic Quantum WOW band on board. They took and rescanned it, and this is the same band that I wore on the Quantum of the Seas. They didn't throw it out, they didn't have to do anything, they didn't give me a new band, they just scanned it, and in a couple seconds I was on my way and it went back to my cabin, scanned it, and it immediately opened my door. Something that you couldn't really say about the ones when they were throwing them out on the past two ships. So even little things like that you just would not have expected to be so vastly different in 6 months from the Harmony of the Seas, which was a newer ship, were completely night and day, and that is really this entire ship. Even just getting into your room and how you get your keys. Instead of having one in an envelope on your door as it was on Quantum, going in, finding the rest, they had a very nice, an actual custom-made little envelope that included not just one but both of our keys for our cabin in it, and it had a seal on it so that you actually had to rip the seal to get in, so you knew for sure nobody else gained access to your keys, nobody else gained access to your cabin. It was finally secure, something that I think a lot of people had some concern about since the beginning of them doing the keys outside the cabin, and they've finally taken care of that on the Anthem of the Seas. Even in the cabin, everything was ready. Not only was everything ready, but our Crown and Anchor stuff was there, like our drinks and nice plate of fresh cookies. Something, of course, the Quantum class is famous for, those fresh baked cookies. But they even had some extra things like a little slip of paper that said our onboard credit. Something that normally you don't find out until 2-3 days into your sailing. It'll show up on your account. It was already on our account and actually showed up on the website a couple days ago to use, something that I believe just started within the past week as a new policy for the company. You can actually spend your onboard credit before you board the ship. But not only could you do that, but it was actually on the account when we arrived, and there was a nice slip in the room, so we knew for certain not only that we got it, but exactly how much we had, which of course just makes things simpler. Everything today was just simpler. It was easier, it worked perfectly, you didn't really have to think, you didn't get frustrated or annoyed, things just kind of worked and were common sense, which, you know, that just did not happen on the Quantum of the Seas. And even the Harmony of the Seas, which is a newer ship that's supposed to take the Oasis class and combine all the great things the Quantum class has to offer into a brand new ship, was not as smooth or polished as the Anthem of the Seas. I mean, she may be turning 2 this week, but she is still vastly ahead of even the Harmony of the Seas. It really is a smoothly operating ship and balancing that technology. So hopefully this continues the next 12 days. There were, of course, a couple little things. Mainly, you can guess it, Royal IQ. There's always going to be issues with Royal IQ, and that's, as I've mentioned many times, not going to change anytime soon. But for the most part, beyond that, everything has been very smooth on this day. And so, as we move on to not just the boarding process and how much better the Anthem is, but our compass today, all the things that went on today. There, of course, were a few things that you would expect. Big thing, everyone gets on board. First thing they do is go get some lunch. And most people go to the Windjammer. I chose to go to 270 Cafe, one of those nice venues that is unique to the Quantum class. It, of course, is a nice evolution of the Park Cafe that you can find on the rest of the fleet, but it still has a couple unique things to itself, so it's always a nice place to go when you first board the ship or any day of the sailing to enjoy a nice meal. And one of the nice things they did this time compared to Quantum, once again, everything's getting better with Anthem. Quantum of the Seas, in Bayonne, there is not the greatest view. Don't think anyone would argue that. And when you're in 270, that view is basically just looking at some marshland, some cargo, the parking garage, nothing really fancy. And today when we went into 270, they had those blinds closed and they had a nice waterfall vistorama going. And I believe they switched it to a second waterfall, slightly different one, but I believe it was still waterfall vistorama. So you could enjoy your lunch and watch the waterfalls, have a nice view out. And it was also drizzling at the time, so it was a nicer view than even the weather could have offered us at that time. After a little while, they did, of course, open those blinds, lower the robo screens, and they started playing Drew's video throughout the ship, both in 270 on the pool deck and all the different venues, just to give everybody a little guide to what is the Anthem of the Seas, what venues she offers, all those little things you need to know for your sailing. And then one of the little secrets of the Quantum class, and Anthem specifically, that people don't often know, and honestly I didn't even see it listed in the compass once again, is that North Star is actually open on day 1. You need to get a reservation for North Star. You can book it ahead of time online, you can do it in Royal IQ, or they have some stands set up where you can do it on board the ship as well. I believe it's the same place as the entertainment is done. But if you want to go without a reservation on day 1, North Star is typically operating. It usually starts about noon. Today was about 12:15. We saw it go up for the first time. And it is first come, first serve. If you get there early, you can get right on. And there was really no line for it today. When we went, at least, we got pretty much straight on when we went to try it out. And of course, you get that great view of New York Harbor, or the Statue of Liberty, Freedom Tower, everything that Manhattan has to offer, as well as just looking down on the Anthem of the Seas, as well as all of Cape Liberty and that cruise port down there that is only about 2.5 years old at this point, so still relatively new down below. So that took probably about 10 to 15 minutes. There are also a couple other nice advances that they made with it. They have moved the line. It is no longer on the starboard side where it used to be, and they would have the nice little cattle herd there to help organize things. It is now on the port side, which is right next to the elevator, which does work on the Anthem of the Seas, unlike Quantum. And that, of course, makes it much easier for people to get up if you need the elevator, because it is right where the line is, instead of having to do a weird thing where they'd have to travel all the way around the ship to get to that elevator, because there is no simple way to get from one side to the other with the bar in the middle and a lot of chairs and things in the way to get there. So that, of course, makes things much smoother. And then in the capsule itself, they have actual bin of binoculars. So when you're up there, you can use complimentary binoculars to get a nice view of whatever you want up close and see all that stuff even better. In addition to the North Star, we of course took a little walk around the ship and saw it was rather empty. That's something I noticed all day long. The ship just is very empty. This sailing is actually sold out. Last I checked, there was only one Royal Suite available, and the rest of the rooms sold out. Couldn't get an inside, balcony, ocean view, anything. So it should be a rather full ship. Not sure what the numbers are, but overall today it's been very empty. That could be that there are no real big Crown and Anchor numbers. First time in a while since probably the Grandeur, the very first sailing the cruise we ever did, that we haven't had massive Crown and Anchor numbers. And that, of course, means that things are feeling very different on the ship. There's a new energy, a lot of excitement, things that we don't see on the past several sailings. So after walking around a bit, of course, at 2:30, we had our muster drill for the sailing. And like the rest of the ship, it was surprisingly empty, unlike Harmony and even Quantum, where it was hard to find a seat. On Harmony, of course, we had to stand. There was plenty of seating, plenty of open room still, so that was certainly not a problem. And it pretty much started on time. It was very similar to the Quantums. They played the video, went through the information, then ended it with an announcement from Captain Shrek Oban. Of course, same captain as the Quantum of the Seas had when she was here. They did not do any of the little preview information like they did on the Harmony of the Seas, none of that background information on your muster station or any of those extra bits of information that, of course, were rather useful and informative to have on the Harmony of the Seas. So that's something that was unique to the Harmony, and once again, hopefully that expands the other ones, but it is not something they did today on the Anthem of the Seas. So that lasted about a half hour. We probably got out just like 2 minutes before 3 o'clock, which of course was our departure time for the day, a very early one. Normally you have much more time to get on board the ship. All aboard was at 2 o'clock, and because we departed at 3 o'clock, meant that we had plenty of time before dinner, something we haven't had in a long time. So dinner, of course, was at 5:30 tonight, roughly maybe 45 minutes after the last events of that departure. And for today's dinner, it was a menu of items that I remember having on the Harmony of the Seas, but I don't remember them being on the same menu together. So I think it was a little bit of a rearrangement of some of the items. So for me, I started with the French onion soup as an appetizer, one of the classic dishes, something I've had on the past several sailings, which makes it a good dish to kind of judge a ship by. And it was, once again, very different than the other sailings. This time it came in a crock, and it was messy. Something you usually don't want to see in a dish, but something you do want to see in a French onion soup. It had cheese overflowing and crusted onto it just like you would get in a good restaurant on land. So it was an absolutely delicious dish, and one of those things that usually they actually overly clean so you don't get a nice, good, cheesy dish like you did today. So that was a great dish. And then for my entree today, I went for the baked polenta and feta cheese, a dish I, of course, had on the Harmony of the Seas for the first time and was absolutely delicious. So I once again tried it and once again enjoyed it just like it was on the Harmony of the Seas. Very similar, and don't really think there was any difference to it between the two ships. And then for my dessert today, I went with the peach and blueberry cobbler, another dish that I had on the Harmony of the Seas. This time it was done slightly differently. On the Harmony it seemed like things were mixed together a little more, where on today's dish it was a little more divided. There was a very distinct peach zone and blueberry zone to that dish. So then, following dinner, as you've heard a million times on the Harmony of the Seas, following dinner then comes the entertainment, and that is no exception on the Anthem of the Seas. She is loaded with entertainment. As far as I can tell, looking ahead at the schedule and looking back at some of the compasses from previous 12-night sailings, far more entertainment than even the Harmony of the Seas offered. And it is a diverse variety of entertainment. Harmony had a lot of shows, but a lot of it was repeats. This ship is loaded with entertainment. Every night will be jam-packed with things to see and do. And that, of course, started tonight with the Welcome Aboard show, which was starring comedian Jim David. So it, of course, started, as you'd expect with the Welcome Aboard show, with the cruise director, Drew Pavlov, introducing himself welcome everybody on board the Anthem of the Seas, giving some background information, of course introducing the Anthem of the Seas Orchestra, and then finally introducing Jim David. Now, Jim David, of course, we saw on the Quantum of the Seas as well, and tonight his act seemed different. A lot of these comedians tend to repeat things, but I honestly don't really remember any of these jokes. I remembered him the moment he walked out. I remember his appearance and behavior, but I don't really remember the jokes that he did. A lot of it was jokes around questions that people ask of guest services, things along those lines. Some cruise humor, nothing that really seemed too distinct to the Anthem of the Seas or the sailing, but some cruise humor and other things. And he'll, of course, be back for an adult comedy session later in this sailing as well. So that's another one of those things that we've been seeing a lot of with these comedians who come on board for the Welcome Aboard show, which is normally a shorter act. So he'll be back later, and of course we'll check that out and see how he does there.
You know what I mean? Like you go up to somebody and go, and they have to be nice. You know what I mean? They can't slap you. You know, they have to go, yes, sir. Yes, sir. Thank you for bringing that to my attention, sir. Yes, sir. I will take that up with my supervisor. Yes, sir. And then you walk away and they're usually like, stupid idiot, I hope he jumps off the ship.
But immediately following that was at 8:30 in the Royal Theatre. Then at 9:30, opposite end of the ship in 270, was an event called 270 Tonight. Back on the Quantum of the Seas, we of course were told by Jimmy Rhodes that they were going to start something called an Evening With. And that was supposed to be an event in which the cruise director would be in 270, kind of show everything off. Fistoramas would go, robo shows would go. You'd have random airlists coming down. You'd have chefs coming out to do some cooking demonstrations, basically an evening of learning all about the Anthem of the Seas, or in that case, the Quantum of the Seas. They did do that. That happened in January. From what I've seen following it, it was very shortly lived. It only lasted a couple sailings before it kind of faded out, and it was replaced with other smaller showcase events, this of course being one of them. So the 270 Tonight event takes place on the very first night of a sailing, and it featured Drew going over what 270 is, some of the background, how it came to be, the different technologies, showing off of course the Vistoramas, the virtual concerts, the robo shows, with the one that we've probably seen about a dozen times at this point. I'm actually probably the only entertainment thing I'm actually tired of at this point, which is Dance in the Box, because we've seen it so many times in the Quantum of the Seas, but you could just tell in the 2 years how much they've tightened even that one, which if you recall in the Quantum sailing they were really working hard to do. And then of course, in addition to all the technology in the venue, as I've said a million times, you can have all this great technology and they do love to take advantage of it, but it's really the talent that makes all this stuff work. It's the talent that really brings everything to life, makes a show out of it all, and of course the talent was showcased tonight with the singers coming out a couple times to showcase their talent, as well as a couple aerialist bits to show off what 270 is capable of from start to finish, top to bottom, in every way possible. So if you're on Anthem of the Seas, or not certain, but I'm sure this is probably on Quantum Innovation as well, be sure to look for 270 Tonight on that first night, because it is a great overview of what the venue is capable of, a great preview of everything that is to come on the sailing in that venue. And it was surprisingly empty again, like everything else here. I mean, still not sure where all the people are. Something that we said with the Quantum and still same with the Anthem. It is just a very spacious ship for the size it is. So then immediately following 270 Tonight, everything's flowing right along, so we went straight from Royal Theatre, 270. There's one entertainment venue left on board the Anthem of the Seas, and that is the music hall. So we headed straight to the music hall because at 10:30 until midnight, an hour and a half show, was the tribute act for this sailing. For this sailing, we of course have another one. We had a Bon Jovi tribute act on the first sailing, Beatles on the second. Told you about how massive a difference it made in the feel of that sailing between the two, just based on whether I loved Bon Jovi and didn't really care for the Beatles. And this sailing we have U2, another band that I like. So I of course checked it out, enjoyed that show. It was the band Elevation, who is a U2 cover band, and they performed for 90 minutes. They performed several of the big songs as well as some of the lesser known songs, and it was just high energy, great show. They really knew what to do to get the crowd interested, and it really had all that energy that you would expect from a U2 concert. You'll be hearing about them again 2 more times during this sailing, but they were a great tribute act, and anytime you get one of these tribute acts, be sure to check them out, because they do each have their own style. They're different bands, they're different cover acts, and you never know just how great one could be, and tonight's was certainly a great band. So that took our first night to midnight and really kind of wrapped up our day. As I mentioned earlier, it is now very foggy out, and actually looking out the door right now, it actually looks very wet on the deck as well. So it may be raining as well, or that could just be the fog, but it's certainly not the nice sunny clear conditions we had earlier today. But tomorrow we are supposed to have some sunshine and nice conditions, so hopefully that'll happen again. And I mentioned we aren't going to do many venue tours, but just to wrap this episode up, I want to just take a moment to look back at how the Anthem came to be, because we of course followed the timeline to the Quantum of the Seas back on that sailing. So now let's take things a bit farther to the Anthem of the Seas and to this point with Royal Caribbean and what has gotten them to now. Picking up where the Quantum class timeline ended last. In November and December 2014, the CruiseView set sail on the Quantum of the Seas. The biggest story of the time, of course, was dynamic dining, and that continued to be the biggest story of the class. In January of 2015, to help support dynamic dining and ease complaints, Divinely Decadence was added as a 5th complimentary venue. Shortly after, also in January, dynamic dining added a 2nd set of menus, increasing the rotation to 8 menus, 2 at each venue. These menus would switch after the 4th day, and for sailings longer than 8 days, would return to the original set of menus at the end. On January 31st, 2015, the first major dynamic dining overhaul was announced for launch on board the Anthem of the Seas. This was the announcement of Dynamic Dining Classic and Choice. Dynamic Dining Choice offered the traditional dynamic dining experience, allowing guests to choose whichever venue and day and time they would like. Dynamic Dining Classic, on the other hand, followed a more traditional format with guests choosing early or late seating and being given a predetermined rotation at that time. On February 20th, 2015, the Anthem of the Seas was floated out of the workhouse and exposed to the sun for the 2nd time, as she had previously floated out in 2 parts to allow the Quantum of the Seas to exit. On April 20th, 2015, the Anthem of the Seas was officially christened by Emma Wilby, a British travel agent.
I name this ship Anthem of the Seas. May God bless her and all who sail on her.
On April 22nd, just 2 days later, she set sail on her maiden voyage. Following the departure of the Quantum of the Seas, on November 4th, she made her grand arrival into New York City just a year after Quantum had. In December of 2015, another dining change was made as Divinely Decadence was replaced by the more traditional Solarium Bistro. In November 2016, the biggest dynamic dining overhaul happened as it was officially removed from the fleet. As a result, the Anthem of the Seas now follows a traditional classic dining format with a new menu every day and all 4 venues serving the same menu each night. And on April 17th, the CruiseView set sail on the Anthem of the Seas for her birthday sailing, as she will be turning 2 this week. So obviously a lot has changed since the Quantum of the Seas. I mean, I don't know how many times we've even said it in this episode already, but it is night and day compared to the Quantum of the Seas, and really not even the Harmony of the Seas. It is a completely different experience, different energy, different everything, and it is going perfectly at this point. It really is finally shining like it should have. The Quantum of the Seas was, and still is in my opinion, the greatest ship I have ever sailed on. The perfect design, perfect venues, most incredible entertainment lineup. I, of course, have not seen the full entertainment lineup on this ship, so I can't say where Anthem will fall, but the Quantum was the best entertainment I've had up to this point. It just failed on the technology, failed on the corporate side, and at this point, that is not happening. Outside Roll IQ, things are working perfectly. Things are working the way they should be, and there's just so much going on. Everything's just flowing from one thing to another. I mean, this ship is just running smoothly. This is what you want, and if you were on the Quantum of the Seas and had a bad experience, do not hesitate to try the Anthem of the Seas, because it is not the same experience. It is all the good things Quantum had to offer, and so much more. And as I walk around the ship, when you mention you've been on Quantum, most people assume you went in Asia. Very few people seem to have sailed the Quantum of the Seas when she was here in Jersey and then sailed the Anthem of the Seas. So I think there are a very small number of people that have given the Anthem that second chance after trying Quantum, and she really deserves it, because she is not her older sister. She is a completely new experience with all the great things her sister had to offer. So that about does it for today's episode. Of course, once again, I'm Picone, and stay tuned for the links, because you do not want to miss a single moment of Anthem.